Now the discussion is not about 2%, it's about 5%. And so there's a little bit of tension there too, because even within the alliance, about getting to that 5% is also a little bit about keeping the Americans close, right?
Now, well, hold on. If I'm catching everything correctly, I know it was 2%, and Canada was not meeting the requirements. Did they boost the number up to 5% now, is what she's saying? Wow. That's crazy. Like, if they weren't meeting 2%, why would you boost it up to 5%? What's up, guys? Looks like Carney just made a deal with the European Union just before the NATO summit. Let's see what this deal is. Let's see what's going on. And again, welcome to the channel, man. Nice to see y'all here. Yeah, so we know that some of the low points that America was talking about Canada was that they were below their NATO spending on defense. They needed to up that. And it looks like Canada is making a move to do just that. So let's check out and see about this deal and see what's going on. As always, guys, let me know where you're chiming in from, and I'm going to holler at you. You know, the American that lives in France, that's me.
As ties with the United States fray, Prime Minister Mark Carney moves to strengthen ties with Europe. Carney has signed a strategic defense and security partnership with the European Union, an agreement that comes as Canada rewrites its relationship with the United States and works towards a new trade deal.
What we're going to do, irrespective of the outcome, is we are going to build trading relationships with like-minded partners, reliable partners, partners that are aligned with our values. It begins here.
Oh, hold. Oh, this video has started. We are 30 seconds into the video. He's already said that America is 30 seconds into the video. Hold on. And he is already saying that America is unreliable. Carney wasted no time telling it like it is.
See the ambition in this partnership and the scope of ambition. And that's the future of trade.
Okay, we have some partners who are aligned with our values here. It's the Power Panel. Lisa Raitt is a former Conservative cabinet minister, and here with me in the studio, Vandana Cotter was an advisor to former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and Jordan Leichnitz is a former NDP strategist. Good to see you all. It's Monday, right? Happy Monday. It's good to see you. Lisa, start with you if we can. There's a long statement here.
Long.
I read it and I was like, these are all the things the G7 didn't say. So the European members in Canada are saying it in this statement. But you can see the strategic intent here this is the chess game that Mark Carney is trying to play of moving away from the United States and connecting more with Europe. What do you make of the direction and intent of what was unveiled today?
It's a lot. I mean, everything is in there. So I think it's so expansive. There's a couple of things that I zeroed in on that I care a lot about. First of all, in there is LNG, that we're going to work with our European partners on LNG. I give a check mark for that.
Hold on. What is LNG? Throwing out these acronyms. Let us know what LNG is.
You mentioned nuclear in there, looking to see whether or not we can progress through a new deal for nuclear. I like that as well. I think that's a really positive thing. I like the fact that we're talking about defense procurement. I think German subs probably make a lot of sense for us. The reality is that we did get squeezed out of some other big discussions around defense. We got squeezed out between the Americans and the Australians. We got squeezed out of another one with respect to Japan and India. So it makes sense that we pivot to Europe. I think the Prime Minister is filling.
Deal marks first step toward Canadian companies participating in 1.25 trillion Rearm Europe program. All righty. Okay.
In gaps that have been left, quite frankly, by a previous government. And that's the dancing partner that's left for us. So let's see how it all pans out, but there's stuff in there that warms my cold conservative heart. So that's not a bad thing.
There are so many cold conservatives' hearts being warmed by the Mark Carney era here, Vandana. Like, how are the Liberals feeling about this? I just wonder, what are your thoughts on what we saw here with this, this framework with Europe? Because there's still some real meaningful details to come.
Yeah, I mean, this is what Mark Carney has campaigned on, both in leadership and during the campaign. So I think Liberals are not surprised by it. He talked about the fundamental change in the relationship with the United States and how we had to find better alliances, and we've overly relied on the United States. So I think this is a shift that we have been prepared for. Mark Carney has been preparing for, and I saw like both your points to the long statement. They talked about a number of other things. They talked about global institutions that they are aligned on. They talked about world crises, so more traditional geopolitical view. And I noticed that President Costas also was talking about shared values of reliability. They talked about our similar vision to how we see foreign policy. They talked about Africa. So a number of things that also, on top of what Lisa said, they're united on and have a vision on. So I think we'll see more of that.
There's a reference to climate change in this thing, Jordan, which we did not see at the G7 just a week ago, which is we know why. But what's your high-level takeaway from what we saw today here?
Well, I mean, to me, this just underlined the degree to which the G7 had become a disaster avoidance exercise, or an exercise in sort of managing Trump and the Americans, rather than one where people like-minded countries were coming together around a table to achieve a diversity of sort of foreign policy goals. So you saw that actually coming out in this statement and not in the G7 statement. And, to hear, as we did in the wake of the G7, that, potentially the Americans were looking to water down some of the language around Ukraine, certainly that would be of significant concern to a lot of European allies. So I noted in this statement that there was a good amount of time taken to really underlining that commitment and Canada's commitment. And look, I think, for a very long time, Canada's partnership with Europe has been underutilized on the trade front, on the security front. So this is a very smart place to make an investment. Although it is really interesting, right? Because we're rolling into NATO, of course, this week. And now the discussion is not about 2%, it's about 5%. And so there's a little bit of tension there, too, because even within the alliance, about getting to that 5% is also a little bit about keeping the Americans close, right?
Now, well, hold on. If I'm catching everything correctly, I know the first it was 2%, and Canada was not meeting the requirements. Did they boost the number up to 5% now? Is what she's saying? Wow, that's crazy. Like, if they weren't meeting 2%, why would you boost it up to 5%? I'm lost.
So while we see that Prime Minister Carney looking to diversify those relationships and deepen the ties with Europe, the Americans are still there, right? They're still very much a part of that conversation, and I think that that tension it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Yeah,
that 5%, it's a blend just for people at home, like 3.5% on direct military spending, and then 1.5% on other things, which could be like port infrastructure and runways and things like this that can help you respond to crises. But it's a lot of money. It's about $160 billion for Canada. But Lisa, just on this deal with the EU, or this directionally with it. Physically, obviously, and geographically, Canada's always going to be in the United States sphere of influence. But sort of, if you listen to them talking today in Brussels and the relaxed body language at this event, intellectually and on a values basis, they're very much Canada and the EU are in the same sphere. At least under Mark Carney was the takeaway I had from that. And they want to work together on a whole bunch of things that they just don't think they can count on the United States to be a reliable partner on, because reliability got said a lot in this conversation.
Or maybe Mark Carney gets to right the wrong of having Brexit while he was the Chancellor of the Bank of England. As you remember, he fought against it. He said it was going to be a disaster for the UK economy and was never really happy with the way that outcome. And here he has the opportunity to go back and say to Europe, okay, well, you lost the UK, but here's Canada. And we're going to join up with you as well. So, of course, he's going to have relaxed body language. He's getting back to where he thinks the path to prosperity is from his point of view. I would point out one thing, though, how refreshing it is to have all these discussions about how much spending we're doing without having a clue where this money is going to be coming from or how much it's going to cost at all with respect to our budget and our fiscal picture. It's an amazing summer of being free from actually having to have any accounting principles in place, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I guess, Vandana, you could look at it that way. But, you know, look, we're going to get a budget September, October. That's the promise. But yes, to Lisa's point, that we are operating without a real clear sense of what the deficit is going to be, what the growth figures are going to be. But this is aspirational spending here, right? And it could be a little bit of back and forth. It could also be selling. It could be buying. But, you know, it is a scaling up of defense capacity on both sides of the Atlantic for self-reliance because of what's happening in the White House.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Canada needs to be protected. So I think really what this is about is investing in Canadian capability and defense spending, what needs to happen, as well as Canada's role in the world. So, I mean, I think for a long time, people have been asking us to increase that 2%.
Now, I'm sorry, guys. I just need to ask, does she have something in her mouth? It seems like she got something right here that's messing up with her speech. I'm just asking.
They're here now. But I think we're seeing, especially looking at the Middle East, there's a number of conflicts we don't know what will happen with Russia and Ukraine. And again, we have volatility in the White House. It makes sense to invest now. Otherwise, we could pay the price for it later. And I think having everything up to date and working, but also ensuring that it helps spur an industry here in Canada and in Europe. I think that's an opportunity, especially in an economy that's still quite tough.
But, Jordan, when you look at this, right, again, because we all noted how long this communique statement was from the Prime Minister's office and the European partners today, you can see the drift from the United States since Trump by what is in this and what they wouldn't and couldn't talk about at the United States. There's a commitment here to the full implementation of a two-state solution, for example, with Israel and Gaza. There is a reaffirm for support for Moldova, which is a European country that is neutral in its constitution. It's non-NATO, but it's next if Ukraine falls, right? These are not things you can do in 2025 with the United States at the table. It takes their absence for the presence of these commitments by the other NATO and G7 countries.
Totally, that's right. And I think that that's why these European tables are increasingly going to be important for Canada, because that is, a lot of the things in the past that used to be matters for NATO are now matters for Europe and its allies alone, without the Americans, right? And that's really what we're seeing here. We're seeing the impact of the Americans tearing down the post-World War II global order that they helped set up. And so I think in that sense, it is important that Canada step up military spending. We have been underinvesting for decades, and of course, including under conservative governments. That's not unique. But there is a problem in that it's true that we don't know what the trade-offs are for this spending yet. So, the PBO has been out talking about potentially what those could be, and the reality that the capping the public service that Prime Minister Carney has talked about is not enough to pay for both the tax cuts and the defense spending, that you would either have to look at deficit or really severe cuts in the public service. So we don't know what is coming. We don't know where the trade-off is going to be, and we're not going to know that until the fall. So I think it's interesting because, of course, right now you're seeing pretty broad support from Canadians about the idea of reinvesting in our military, and I think that there's really good reason for that. But right now, the trade-offs also aren't clear. So we're not going to get that full picture until the fall, and I think that we may see a little bit more conversation around that once we know what exactly is being put in the window to pay for this.
Lisa, this kind of brings us back to your point, right, about the lack of a clear fiscal plan, because the Prime Minister has talked about sacrifice, right, as something people are going to need to do without really articulating and quantifying what that sacrifice is. So, the 2% target, if you want to be at the serious tables in the Trump era, you've got to be at least at that level or above. But we don't know what the cost is going to be to the civil service or to programs. And then how do you, the 3.5% and then 5%, that's a whole bunch of other stuff. Now, some of that's industrial policy that can lump into that, but there's going to be some tough choices to be made if Canada is going to stay on this path.
Yeah, and it's an interesting exercise that the Prime Minister and his cabinet have given themselves a bit of runway, to be honest, a little bit of room to build the case as to why we're going to go further into deficit or why these tough choices are going to be made, and then tell us what the tough choices are going to be after a period of time has gone by and everyone has really absorbed the case and agree with the case for more military spending. And that's kind of what the summer and then the last couple of announcements have been about. And it does make sense if that's the plan that you're taking to get there. And I agree with Jordan. I think there will be a reckoning, but I don't know how strongly people are going to feel about the trade-offs because we just don't have a sense of what they are. But you said something very important in your preamble, David, which is industrial policy.
Yeah.
And there's some strong commitments in that very long communique on aligning Canadian industrial policy with European industrial policy. And that is tough. That is not an easy thing to do, considering we've been oriented so long with the United States. So I look forward to having a little bit more understanding of exactly what that means.
Yeah.
Hey, so the trade-off, you don't know where that's coming from. And to sit at the table with the Americans, you're forced to pay. You're forced to catch up with the NATO spending, for the defense. But it's a good thing. You know why? Because right now, with what's going on, Trump causing this. What's going on between Israel and Iran and the United States, Canada should invest into their military, because we don't know what might happen. Russia's talking about getting into the war with everything. Listen, things look like they may go left, and it's good to be ready. You know what I mean? If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So this might be a good thing. This is a good thing, Just let's see how soon they're going to act on it. The defense spending. America is unreliable right now. And it looks like Canada is getting closer and closer to joining the EU. So, hey, looking good for my people over there in Canada. I'm going to see if I can come on over there and get me an old job over in Canada. But yeah, let me know what you thought about the video, and I will see you in the next.